long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a great adventure took place.
Talking Bird, a special edition.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Bird, the special edition, episode 26. I am your host, Robert Zachary, along with my co-host, John Llewellyn. Hello, John.
Hello.
You feeling Star Warsy today?
I am feeling Star Warsy today. Thank you for asking. Are you feeling Star Warsy today?
I'm having a blessed Star Warsy day, thank you.
Well, good.
Boy, there is a lot, just when you thought that there would be nothing to talk about. I think I've said this many times before.
Yeah, I think most weeks we end up saying, like, well, we didn't really think there was going to be anything, and then, what do you know? Although, especially, I mean, we'll get to this later, but, they released the last trailer, and J.J. Abrams was like, that's it, no more trailers, this is it. And then we get the Japanese trailer, which I guess that's fair.
And then some commercials.
It's not no more U.S. trailers. And then a TV ad, which, okay, that's also not a trailer, I guess. But it's like, yeah, you're still giving us stuff.
I wonder how much of a say he got in that. I know he conceded that there would be commercials in an interview.
Yeah.
But yeah, this international thing, I wonder if he actually had anything to do with it. I'm sure he had.
I don't know.
I'm sure he had to sign off on it. I don't know.
We'll get to that.
Yes, we will get to that.
Ourselves.
I had an interesting little interaction. You might, if you follow us on Twitter, and you really should, because it's
Talking Birdcast at Talking Birdcast.
At Talking Bird, yeah, Talking Birdcast. No, yeah, at Talking. I thought you were saying like we had at talkingbirdcast.com, and I'm like, hey, no, we don't.
No,
I'm too cheap. So I put up a picture of a kind of a fuzzy old picture of Darth Vader standing on a thing signing what I think was puzzles, Star Wars puzzles, circa 1978. And what that was is it was a picture my mom took when I was a kid at this shopping center called Yardbirds in Chehalis, Washington. And it's kind of, you can look it up. There's actually kind of a fun little history of that place. It was it had started out in the late 40s as a Army surplus store that expanded over time and moved where it became a shopping center, kind of comparative on like a combination of what you would like a Bass Pro outlet or a Cabela's mixed with a super Walmart, mixed with a super Target, mixed with anything that you with the Army surplus stores, meaning that you could go there and on a given time you could go and buy clothes for the kids, toys for the kids, a puppy, a monkey, a decommissioned nose cone to a rocket, guns, a headboard for your bed that had a 5-inch black and white TV installed in it, along with a lotion dispenser. Army surplus of all types. I know these are things I actually saw, and that store was an important part of my childhood. I bought all my early Star Wars comics there when I could. Starlog magazine, which is was the kind of your Star Wars clearinghouse of news and news and views over time. And so that that was kind of after this, but I think that was 1978 when they did a press tour, and I'm pretty sure that's not David Prowse in the costume. But what they would do is Lucasfilm would send these people out in these costumes. They'd hire some tall actor guy to literally doing what they, like an in-store. And being 5 years old, I was like, I wanted to see this so bad. Let's go. So we get there. And of course, I'm 5 years old. So how close do you think I actually wanted to get? Not very close. So I actually was a good 30, 40 feet away.
Scary up close.
Yeah, I never allowed myself to get any closer. And it's like, but we snapped that one picture, and it's just been kind of something it's not the greatest photo, but I kept it for years. And then I wrote a little thing about Yardbirds because now it still exists, but it's now just a kind of like an indoor swap meet. They've had, the thing was huge, and it's had major structural issues over the years. So it's kind of like this musty, huge swap meet that you can go to now. So it's not really what it used to be. But anyway, I had written something on my website, and I actually was going to get rid of my website because I haven't updated it in like a year. And just like the day after I was looking into shutting my account down, I got an email from the guy who manages that place. And he was very excited to have come across this photo of Darth Vader from the Yardbird shopping center. And so he wanted to use it on their site. So that was kind of a nice little honor for me. I didn't really tell him about the show because I just didn't think it mattered to some guy who manages a swap meet. But it was kind of nice. It was a little. I assumed that there was probably hundreds of these photos floating around that were taken that day. But it turns out that I'm the only one he's actually come across. So,
yeah.
And it's a good wide shot. So he was very impressed that you could see it had these concrete spiral steps that were painted a certain way, and they've painted them differently over the years. And he's like, "Oh, I totally forgot that's what the color of those steps were and stuff." So it's like a little bit of what do they call it? Forensic archaeology from 1978.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there's no real point to the story except for we're out there spreading the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, but that's also, thinking about today, I can't imagine them doing a lot of mall appearances. They have Disney now. They have access to the Disney parks and doing character meet and greets there. But your local shopping mall, I can't imagine they're going to have 20 different Kylo Rens out and about in America showing up at shopping mall. Not that I guess shopping malls aren't even a big thing anymore anyway. But even if they were.
That's the
it's not the kind of promotional activity that you would imagine happening anymore, and there's something kind of fun, and it's sort of cheesy, and there's definitely something cheesy about it, but there's something kind of fun about that idea of here's just some guy they got to stand in a Kylo Ren suit and just shake hands and sign Kylo Ren on photos and things and get his picture taken with kids, and then he leaves.
Yeah, it's a very 60s, 70s kind of thing. I actually have noticed they would do, some TV shows have in the past have done I remember when Veronica Mars first came out, there was a thing on TV about come meet the stars of Veronica Mars at the Northgate Mall and that kind of thing. And they showed
right.
After they did it, they showed hundreds of kids freaking out. So, but like you said, malls aren't really a thing like they used to be. And there's a great site that if you're and I've mentioned them before, if you're if you're a child of the 70s and 80s, called Plaid Stallions, you can look it up. And it's this guy, Brian Heiler. I think he lives outside of Toronto, and he collects ephemera from these and he especially loves to have pictures of meet and greets from shopping malls of superheroes and over the years. So there's I can't remember. I don't think I've spent a lot of time looking at them, but I actually probably should send him that photo. But it's definitely something that I can't imagine Disney. I know Disney. I read somewhere that they have now officially done away with Star Wars weekends, which was a big thing for people to go down to the Florida one, at least the Disney World, and
I mean, because they've sort of replaced it with Seasons of the Force,
right?
And then also, are they still going to be doing Star Wars Celebration?
Yes.
And so
there will be one in 16 in London.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, which isn't Disney affiliated, but there will be ways for Star Wars fans to meet each other, enjoy each other's company, to go to Disney theme parks together and do Star Warsy stuff. I mean, I just take this as okay. They're kind of relaunching. Sorry, they're relaunching. This is Seasons of the Force or whatever they're calling it, and there will be some semi-permanent features and attractions now, more so than there were over the last decade or so. And so, the Star Wars weekends themselves are maybe, well, they don't need that because they want people to go and do Star Wars stuff all of the time rather than just like on a designated weekend.
Exactly. They should get that Future Islands guy to do an ad for their Seasons of the Force.
Yeah. Or Anna Kendrick. I guess they could get Anna Kendrick to
do yeah, they did. They got her for Star Wars.
Well, they got her for
Battlefield.
Disney hit. Yeah.
Battlefront. Sorry. Battlefront. You're right. Yeah, we're looking at T-minus 7 days. For some reason, the way all the ad looks makes you think it's coming out today, but it comes out next week. Today is like all these other games. This is the sweet spot where for the next 3 or 4 weeks, every major game for the rest of the year basically gets released. So it's like this constant jockeying for position to get people to buy it for Christmas. There's everything has a themed console to it, and Anyway, I think we're getting ahead because you have something about Battlefront later on, right?
Well, just that I just started reading the tie-in novel Twilight Company, and so I'll probably get to that next week or the week after, because I'm less than 20% of the way through the book. So, but yeah, it's pretty good so far. I like it well enough.
Yeah, I see that, and also as far as what was the news story you just told me right before we went on the air? Oh, the ABC thing. The ABC, the Shonda Rhimes is going to... And assorted people from How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal. Yeah,
so this I guess came out, or this hit the wires, hit the tubes right before we started recording that this Thursday, so what is that, the 11th?
No, it'll be the
12th. The 12th. ABC, which of course is owned by Disney, which also owns Star Wars. They have a TGIT, which I assume stands for Thank God It's Thursday, which no one ever, like, that's not a saying. They just kind of made that up.
ABC's bringing the God back in putting the God back in Thursdays.
Thank goodness is they don't ever say what the TGIT stands for, but basically it's like a Shonda Rhimes. It's their Shonda Rhimes night where they have Grey's Anatomy and Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder, and so they're also this Thursday there's some TV special about The Force Awakens that's going to be hosted by Shonda Rhimes and then actors from those 3 shows. So there's speculation like, are they going to be showing new footage or not? The ad itself only describes it as a special exclusive event. So the fact that they use exclusive makes me think that, okay, we're going to be seeing stuff that we haven't seen before, but I don't know that necessarily has to be footage. Like, I just assume this is them putting their electronic press kit like on TV for free because they can do it through ABC.
Yeah, it's probably a little geared more towards adults, because I doubt.
Yeah, for those shows,
unless they're really trying. I don't know. I've never watched any of these of Shonda Rhimes.
I doubt there are like 8-year-olds out there who are really into Scandal.
The truth is if I were a kid and they were doing a special it's like this tonight on CBS. join the cast of Lou Grant as they talk about The Empire Strikes Back. I'd be like, no, we have to watch Lou Grant.
That's true.
I would watch Lou Grant. You know,
I wonder if they're going to have like special Star Wars tie-ins in these episodes too.
We all of a sudden like a lightsaber shoots out of the corner.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm trying to remember if they. I mean, they did that a lot on Fox in the '90s when they would have Sam Jackson come and host like clips from the things to get you geared up for the next prequel movie.
Right.
He would stand like he'd stand in front of a battle droid model and make a joke about he'd make that joke. It's like something when you absolutely have to shoot every guy and every blankety blank in the room. And it was just like, it was kind of very like him playing up his image as a badass. But
right.
I mean, definitely the Star Wars holiday special was, even though that came out way before the Empire, but I guess there is some precedent to having, I don't know. It makes me wonder, is like, did they do something and they realize like the movie's not tracking with adults over the age of 35 or something? I doubt it. If anything, I've been seeing a lot of think pieces telling people to not to think of this as your Star Wars. This is for kids. This is going to be this is the changeover kind of thing.
And I go back and forth on that. Because it's starting to sound like it was always that way. And it's just that, but I think there is more of a push to like, do you feel, as someone who is not a child, do you feel like you're kind of getting pushed out of being a Star Wars fan? Like, do you feel like you're being told like, okay, you need to drop this, you need to give it up, like this stuff is for children, like, let's let someone else have a turn?
Well, no. No, I haven't heard anybody. I haven't gotten that feeling. I mean,
I don't think that's, they're meaning it in that way. I think it's a way of setting expectations, right? And like, okay, well, just because you think this movie is boring or like you think Jar Jar Binks is dumb or whatever, that these are for kids and that, kids have different sensibilities than you do, and you'll just have to find the stuff that you like, and the stuff that you don't like, you can't really say anything about. You can't criticize because it's not intended for you,
right?
Right. So it's a way to simultaneously set expectations and then also like begin to counter criticism, I guess. That's how I take it anytime I hear, oh, this is for kids, this is for children, so we're marketing this towards kids or whatever. Because we'll talk about this later, but I mean, the marketing of this movie so far, I don't think has really been aimed at kids that much. I mean, obviously they're making toys and pillowcases and pajamas and stuff for kids, but I mean, a lot of the marketing for this so far has not really, I don't think, been really aimed at, or at least if it has been aimed at children, it's also been done in a way that like adults would be receptive to it as well.
It's like the weirdest thing I saw was somebody, I think it was on Reddit, had put a picture of apples, like a bag of apples with a Kylo Ren silkscreen on the bag. And somebody was kind of like, this is a little extreme. But I mean, I think that's the difference in the way, the way that Lucas in the early days tended to curate the marketing a lot differently, where, J.J. Abrams and Larry Kasdan are not involved in the marketing of toys. And,
right.
It's, George, he knew that at the end of the day, he was going to get return on investment from all the marketing because he owned it all. But Disney, I mean, they've been marketing stuff. I mean, there is Donald Duck orange juice and anything you can slap Ilsa and I don't remember the other Frozen gal's name on. They've done, and I'm sure that's kind of the
Frozen gal.
The Frozen gal. There's Elsa and
I've never seen it, so
I've never seen it either.
You said Frozen gal.
That Frozen gal. That Frozen gal. If I don't sound old as it is, they'll be like, yeah, the guy that said Frozen gal last week. I think he should be banned from the podcast. They're not gals. They're full potential Disney princesses.
Yeah.
Don't put them in a box.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I mean, the other thing about this TV special, like it's sort of similar to those mall appearances that we're talking about, where it's kind of quaint that they're still doing these things, and I guess enough people still watch TV that it's different from the decline of the American shopping mall, but it's like that also seems it's a very like 1980s or 1990s idea of, okay, we have this super popular show, let's use that to promote something else, like let's but during TV, so NBC will have this block of shows anchored by Friends, but they have something else they want to promote, so let's have the cast of Friends sit around and like during the normal commercial time, let's like throw to them and have all of them be sitting on a couch talking about some movie.
That's kind of how they, and I think that when they're promoting something that you actually can't get at home, you have to go out and I think this is smart, but they kind of, NBC screwed this up in the 90s, since you bring up the 90s, by doing, at that time, the viewers, the amount of times that you could see It's a Wonderful Life on television had been, it was on a loop. It was on TBS, would just do a loop. Yeah. And I think what happened is they said, oh, we're saturating the market. So they pulled it back and said, we're only going to show it once. And they cut in these interstitials of like whoever was on Friends or whatever sitcom, like, oh, it's the Jonathan Silverman show or whatever. Right. And they had the couch and they would go, oh yeah, we used to get around sit around the TV and get some popcorn. And my favorite part is this. And they can't really do that, but can they? I mean, I'm sure they're going to talk about, like, they're going to show them something and then they're going to be like, oh, that looks scary.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, I would imagine, I guess TGIF, which TGIT is hearkening back to, but TGIF used to do this all the time too, where they would have like, I guess this was mostly I feel like they did this a lot to like host the evening, where like the whole evening, this block of shows, but then they would cut to like, oh, this week it's the cast of Family Matters, like talking about how much they love Step by Step or whatever.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, for this, I would imagine, I would guess that, they're going to spend some time like telling the story of the first 6 Star Wars movies to like get people up to speed. And then they'll have to say like, okay, so now this movie takes place 30 years over after the Return of the Jedi. And this is, I mean, I wonder if they'll have to explain a little bit of what the universe of what the Star Wars galaxy, the state of the galaxy is like when The Force Awakens comes out, just to give people context and in that sense, like maybe reveal some stuff that isn't like earth shattering or, spoilers really, but some stuff that might be in the movie, just to sort of say like, all right, so for those of you who are curious, for you 8-year-olds who ask your parents to stay up and watch How to Get Away with Murder just so you can see this thing, here's what Star Wars is, here's the story to date, going over the story of Star Wars generally and what the Skywalker family is about and who the Jedi were and why they're not around anymore. But I would also imagine it's going to involve a lot of Shonda Rhimes and the cast members talking about how much they love Star Wars and how excited they are for this movie, and who their favorite character is, and how I used to dress up like Leia all the time, or I always wanted to be Han Solo, or things like that.
Yeah, it's very it's not going to be
very kind of fluffy.
It's not going to be any. Yeah, there's not going to be a lot of depth. I
would imagine if there's anything new, there's probably not going to be a lot of new footage. And if there is, it's not going to be that consequential. It's going to be, oh, here's a shot of Rey walking around the desert that we haven't seen before. But that's it. The new and exclusive stuff is maybe going to be story related, or even, maybe they're going to do interviews with cast members or something like that.
Yeah, I'd be actually happy if they didn't do any more footage. I don't know how much more I can take. It's kind of like every new scrap kind of sends my brain into analysis mode. and I'm trying to
and
I really wish I could just shut that part of my brain off and go, all right, but I still, it's still a little over a month. What are we at now? 36 days or 38 days or something like that. It's
right.
It's like I just hold out. I don't want any more spoilers.
And that's, I'm probably not going to watch this on Thursday, but I'll probably wait and see what people say. And if there was a lot of new footage, I'm probably not going to watch it, just because, like you say, every bit of new footage we get, I'm like, oh, well, maybe, where in the plot does this come in? And is this before or after that other footage we've seen? And, I just want to go ahead and enjoy the movie and not have all of these preconceptions in my head.
Right.
And so
I mean, after that marathon show we did where we put all of our energies into analyzing what we thought was going to be our last glimpse of the movie before we saw it, we were treated to another. How long would you say? I forget. Was this one like 2?
Whoa.
Was it like 2 minutes or something like that?
Yeah. It's about the same length of time as the other trailers.
Yeah, so it's a whole nother trailer which only shares about maybe a third of the same footage.
Yeah. And this trailer, I guess, is meant for Japanese audiences because it has Japanese subtitles and the text is in Japanese. So this is the international trailer or the Japanese trailer, whatever you want to call it. And there's new footage. The dialogue is different, so in the last US trailer, I guess there was Maz Kanata saying, "Who are you?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm no one." And then you had Finn talking about who he was. But in this one, it's just Maz Kanata basically talking about eyes, and I see the same eyes in different faces, and I know your eyes, and it's even more dialogue, I assume, from that same sequence. So it puts a whole different spin on. I mean, there is some footage that is the same, right? Yes. They didn't go completely. It's not 2 minutes of new footage, right. But the music is also different, and we spent some time analyzing the music, and lots of people spent time analyzing the music from that last US trailer, and how they used Han and Leia's theme primarily. But what I thought was interesting is that they, and this makes sense because they also, in the Japanese trailer, we did not get that shot of Han and Leia embracing. We didn't, I don't think, got much of Leia at all, if anything. There was a shot of her and Poe and C-3PO
and what's his and who's the actor? It was on Lost with the gray hair.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, I'm spacing on his name.
Yeah,
he's
in the control room or
right. And he's out of focus. I just know because he's got that salt and pepper hair that.
Yeah. So that's really the only bit of Leia that we see, I think, in the Japanese trailer, and so it was interesting that this trailer, the Japanese trailer, it's not playing up that relationship, that Han and Leia relationship as much, and instead, the music was basically the Yoda and the Force, and it culminates in that fanfare, that horn fanfare, from when Yoda lifts Luke's X-wing out of the swamp on Dagobah. So that's, they're just going, okay, here's the basic, here's the Force people, this is sort of Star Wars in the broadest sense, rather than, for that last US trailer, I guess they assumed, that the US audience maybe was a little more invested in what's happened to Han and Leia, and, why are they apart, and what are they doing? What is their status now? So I thought that was kind of interesting, just to see those differences in emphasis.
Yeah, it really goes to show you that it's like you really don't know what you're going to be we don't truly know what we're going to be walking into in a couple weeks, and it's like, because if the footage can be manipulated in a way to kind of, for months we were all like, oh, it's, Boyega, he's the center of this. He's going to be the center of all the action kind of thing. And now I kind of, from the trailers now, I kind of feel like it's going to be Rey. he's going to be there for sure, but he's not the he's not the only he's not going to be the main thrust of the story. But he's obviously going to have an interesting story, but he may not be the new Jedi or whatever. They keep talking like there's a Kylo Ren toy that they go something about the Last Jedi, and some people have speculated, oh, that's Finn, and now people says, oh, it's Rey, and no, it's Luke. It's like, I don't know. We assume because of the name that somebody's going to be awakening with the Force. I'm just questioning now who it is. It's like that idea, like, oh well, Finn's got the lightsaber, so it's got to be him. But it's like, well, I'm seeing a lot of deft staff work or whatever from Rey, and we know that she trained like crazy in some martial art that she was talking about before.
Yeah, and she does have a couple fight scenes. It sounds like from other things that I've read. And even we saw in this trailer, we saw her, fighting with some thug with her staff.
Did we see that it was a thug? Because I honestly.
It was someone. I assume, from the figures and Legos and coloring books or whatever. I feel like we've seen or we've heard of a lot of characters that live on Jakku, right? So there's like Unkar and Unkar's thug, and the two different like gangs that the people who are in the raid are playing those characters, and we've heard of a lot of, and Constable Zuvio, we've heard of a lot of those kinds of characters, but without ever seeing any footage that like implies that they have any kind of significant role in the film. And so, I've been wondering exactly how much time this film is going to spend on Jakku, and we've talked about this too, and J.J. Abrams said that everything that we've seen comes from roughly the first third of the movie, which I guess would include the dogfight between the X-Wings and the TIE fighters that on some other planet that is not Jakku, and that snowy planet, and so it sounds like there's a lot going on in that first third of the movie, but at the same time, we've talked about this before, but A New Hope spent 45 minutes on Tatooine, right? Like I don't even think Ben Kenobi shows up until 20-25 minutes into the film,
something like that. Yeah,
and then. And obviously they're going back and forth between Tatooine and Leia and Vader and their situation on the Death Star. But, it's they still spend a good chunk of time hanging out on Tatooine before all of the different characters kind of cross paths. And so I would guess that we're going to see something similar to that in The Force Awakens, and that would... okay, so we know who all these other characters are. Like, there's a reason why we know who they are and why they made figures for Constable Zuvio or whatever. It's because we're going to see Constable Zuvio do something. It's then again, we were talking about this before the show, and there was an era that we were talking about. There was an era where they would just make figures out of everything, and like, okay, here's Lando wearing Han's clothing that. Outfit, and it's like in one shot in Jedi, or here's Han with the AT-AT driver's helmet from Jedi, where he just goes like, "It's over, General. The rebels are fleeing," into right. Or but maybe we're still in that era. Maybe we're not out of that era. And they made a toy out of the Boba Fett parade version, where Dwayne Dunham was dressed up as Boba Fett for some local parade in California before they ever filmed, right? They made a figure out of that. So maybe, who knows, maybe we're getting Unkar's thug and Constable Zuvio figures just because they can.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense that they would come to them, 6 months ago and say, hey, we want to make a Luke Skywalker figure, we want to make a this, and we want to make a that. And then they go, well, our whole marketing depends on the fact that these characters you're kind of kept in the dark. Like, who do you have that we can make? Constable Zuvio, you know, this kind of you know, we got tons of stormtrooper types, or are they still called stormtroopers? I know that's a weird thing to ask when I've been 6 months doing this podcast. Are the First Order stormtroopers still called stormtroopers?
I think so. I think they're just called like First Order stormtroopers.
Oh, okay. That kind of stuff. And so it's like, I don't know. You know, I keep thinking about like, do they really mean all this stuff is just the first third of the movie? It can't be. I mean, is that, you know?
I wonder.
I feel like that whole Starkiller base thing has got to be the end. It's got to be like, I don't know. In my mind, it's like the first third is Jakku, and then there's the Maz Kanata, then there's the Rebel base, and then there's the assault on Starkiller base. In my mind, but then I'm going like, well, where's Luke? Where's the whole Luke thing? Is that a denouement at the end, or is it, you know, I don't know. Somebody had emailed me, a mutual friend, saying that he kind of he felt like he had a feeling about how the entire story is going, but I didn't actually ask him to elaborate, because if he had an observation I hadn't had yet and he really spoiled me on it, I'd be like, oh, I can't stop thinking about this when I'm sitting in the theater or whatever. I'm going off on a tangent now.
Yeah. So one thing, I want to talk about the dialogue a little bit.
Okay.
Right. So as I said, it's Maz Kanata, and I'm going to paraphrase whatever, but she just is like, oh, I see the same eyes in different faces. And then she says, I know your eyes. And as she's saying that line, you see Rey like looking up, or you know, something. Yeah, you see the whites of her eyes, you know, underneath her. And so a lot of people are maybe taking this as yet another hint about Rey's character and who she could be. But I also do wonder if it's just a trick of editing, right? We have no idea who Maz Kanata is even talking to in this scene, because we still haven't seen her outside of the poster, which I think people have confirmed that that's Maz Kanata on the poster, the little creature. But right, so but we haven't seen Maz Kanata in any of the trailers or anything, so we have no context for who she's talking to. They use the same shot as the U.S. trailer. I assume it's Han and Finn and Rey walking into Maz Kanata's castle with all those flags out front. I assume that's Maz Kanata's castle. It could not be, but
right.
Even on the assumption that it is, right? So then it could be any of those three. We know Maz is present when Leia gets Luke's lightsaber, so it could be Leia. It could be any number of people, or it could be that she is speaking purely metaphorically, and right, she sees the same eyes in different faces because you have the eyes of someone who is haunted by a secret, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a specific, like, oh, I know your eyes because those are Skywalker eyes. It could be, oh, I know your eyes because you are unhappy with your life. You know, it could be something as basic as that,
right?
And I'm sure I'm probably wrong about this, but this is me like holding out hope that like, no, I don't want to know what the movie is. Like, don't tell me what the movie is. Don't try to figure out all of its secrets before we see it.
Well, kind of the way that we'd always kind of thought of Maz Kanata as like a substitute for a Jabba the Hutt type. At least in my mind, it was the idea that, you know, Maz Kanata, she has like a castle and she's got a bunch of. She's got a rogues gallery, like weird. So obviously she's some kind of crime lord or something. But then with this kind of dialogue, it makes me wonder. It's like, well, this is kind of like, you know, more metaphysical kind of, you know, almost. And then all of a sudden I start thinking about Nepal and like up on K2 or whatever, when they have like the flags when people go and climb, there's always like these long flowing flags in that culture. I don't really know the significance, if it's just they're marking out there's a camp here, or if it's got some kind of, I never really looked into it, but all of a sudden I think of flags and I think of that kind of stuff. And like, maybe she's more of a, you know, maybe Maz Kanata is more of a Zen character who will be, you know, imparting knowledge or observations that kind of almost like a Obi-Wan Kenobi type character.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, because Star Wars is very literal up until the Obi-Wan Kenobi starts giving his little speech to Luke, and then you realize there's for lack of metaphysical. There's a metaphysical component to Star Wars that is only revealed, 35, 40 minutes into it. It's, and also going back to that idea that I was thinking to myself, well, like, oh yeah, I don't believe this whole idea that people don't know about Jedis and the Force and all that stuff. And then I realized, like, Luke didn't really seem to understand anything about this metaphysical construct. He knew that there was a Clone Wars in Ben's house and stuff like that. He goes, "Oh, you fought in the Clone Wars." I mean, they don't get into it but the whole idea that there's a metaphysical component to the galaxy seemed completely like a surprise to him. Like, huh?
Right.
And then he gets the lightsaber, and then he's like, "Oh, you should come and do these kind of things." And he really doesn't really make that decision until his family is murdered. But it's kind of like, I guess it does kind of set up the idea that, yeah, over the 60 years, or the 50 years between episode 3 and episode 7, the whole concept that there had been a monk, like a warrior class, a monk class of these Jedi that, meted out justice over the galaxy, that easily is enough time for people to have forgot about them. So it's almost like, oh, okay, it's not a trick of the editing, and it's really about something about Luke that they're just trying to hide in plain sight. It makes me wonder if, like, this whole idea of them slowly revealing again to the people, like, what's going on? I'm getting these things, and then she explains, well, that's because there's this thing called the Force, blah, blah, blah. But
right.
I don't know. I saw that Lego of Maz Kanata.
I know. It looks terrible.
It's terrible. It looks awful. I'm really hoping that the character's going to be a lot better. I mean, I know I
think the character in the movie will look fine. It's just, I mean, Lego tried to, because they're doing this now where, I guess before, they would just use the standard Lego person head and just paint it differently to resemble the character. But now they're like changing the shape of the Lego head to have it try to match like the real thing. They did this with the Simpsons, I know, where, they gave them like the actual head or whatever, and so Lego's sort of changing how they're doing these tie-in characters. And so, but the way they did it still has to sort of fit a Lego look and a Lego style. And it didn't work. It doesn't work to me, in my opinion.
Yeah. And also, I guess from this trailer, we realize, Finn and Rey introduced themselves to each other on the deck of the Falcon, which means that, at least in the way I look at it, when they meet, it's going to be hectic.
Yeah.
It's going to be
just like, hey, you're in trouble, come with me and I'll help you.
Yeah,
and that let's just run for our lives.
Yeah, so much so that, like, between the time they meet and the time they kind of go through that whole thing, it's going to be like just boom, 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 which it'll be interesting if that's the first third of the movie. That's a lot of, if they're trying to, JJ, we'll get to this, but when they were talking about some interview that it kind of uses the New Hope as kind of template in some respects.
Yeah.
And having that much, I mean, the action doesn't really seem to kick in Star Wars until they escape. Well, I mean, it doesn't actually happen until they escape. And that's the point, is like they're going to have action. Them trying to escape is maybe going to occur much sooner in the movie.
Yeah. I also just hope that they don't try to play it up into like Anakin Skywalker meet Obi-Wan Kenobi. That kind of like you don't have to
That was such a
so obvious.
That was such a groaner when I saw that in the theater the first time. I was just like, really, that's well, I guess we don't have to worry about that. George isn't involved.
Yeah, but you know, try to manufacture it as like a momentous event. You know, whereas you know, say something like A New Hope again, when Luke meets Ben Kenobi for the first time, and you find out that like, oh, he's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and because of that, he's this general from the Clone Wars, and you know, he's the person that you were looking for, and he's gonna drive the plot from here on out. And it's right, you get a sense that it's this momentous meeting, but you mostly get that sense from the music, I think, that I mentioned in the context of Rebels, I guess, where there's this little like harp or celeste little run when Obi-Wan Kenobi says, Obi-Wan, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. You know, you get sort of the music giving you a sense of like, oh, this is an important moment.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, he's not like, oh, hello, I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi, and who might you be? I'm Luke, you know, I'm Luke Skywalker, and, you know, that kind of thing. Or even, again, in A New Hope, that moment of like, I'm Luke Skywalker, and I'm here to rescue you, right? It's everything that the movie has done to lead up to that sort of makes you go like, oh, that's like a key line, or like this is a key moment when they meet and, you know, he rescues her or whatever. Whereas, yeah, the Anakin Skywalker meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, it just comes out of nowhere, and it's pure like fan service, which that term I don't think was really around then, so that's an anachronistic.
Well, she probably actually invented that, because
yeah,
the idea of like, oh, Anakin Skywalker, we will watch your career with great interest.
Right.
It's like, oh man, really?
Right.
Really?
It's like, hey, get it, audience, get it. They're meeting for the first time. Isn't this interesting? Remember from the other movies, right? And so I just hope. I mean, in a sense, and even in that meeting, right, they don't tell each other their last names, so that's maybe interesting and important. But like, I just hope they don't make those moments kind of feel manufactured. They let those moments kind of occur naturally. Which I guess I've also. I haven't seen Spectre, but I was reading reviews of it, and it sounds like they kind of made a similar manufactured moment when one character, when Blofeld reveals himself.
Ooh, spoiler alert!
But then it all whatever. But then also in Star Trek Into Darkness, when Khan did the same thing, where like when Khan revealed himself as Khan, and again I haven't seen it, but you did, so you can call me out on how right or wrong this is, but. From what I read, it seems like it didn't really have any context within the scene. It was purely so that the audience could go like, "Oh wow, that's Khan." Where, you know, within the context of the scene, there was really no reason for any of the other people in that scene to be like impressed by that fact. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I mean that's the scary thing, is that really the person responsible for that is the person responsible for this movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it was such a tone deaf way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could go off on Star Trek forever because I love Star Trek. Not as much. It's like, you know, I don't love it as much as I love Star Wars, but I do love Star Trek. That, you know, his poor handling of that, which, you know, his denials that, oh, it's not Khan. You know, and it's almost like he was trying to pay into that bank that's revealed in this scene when he goes, I am Khan Noonien Singh. And you're just like, literally the answer is, if you hadn't seen, you know, Space Seed, or you hadn't seen The Wrath of Khan, if you had just walked into a theater saying, I'd like to get into this Star Trek thing, you'd go, right. So what?
Right.
What is that?
Who is that?
That doesn't mean anything. One, it's a white dude with a kind of vaguely, you know, exotic name, and it's like, it doesn't denote anything. I mean, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm going to talk about Star Trek. Go watch Enterprise. Watch Enterprise and the whole sub thing with the enhanced. It was like Brent Spiner did like a 3-episode run. It's way better than Star Trek Into Darkness. Enough Star Trek talk.
All right. Well, yeah, but so that was right. So that's the fear, is you say like, it's okay. So J.J. Abrams was in charge of both, and he maybe didn't handle Star Trek as well. I mean, he seems to at least have more checks on his impulses to do that kind of stuff with Star Wars. So
I'm really hoping, that Kathleen Kennedy and Lawrence Kasdan are kind of operate as a triumvirate or whatever to kind of curtail his lesser skills.
Yeah. So I just realized that whole discussion about Maz Kanata and the "I know your eyes." That's actually from the 30-second TV ad that got released.
Not
the Japanese trailer. Which whatever.
We'll just use them interchangeably because I'm not going to do. We're not going to do it.
All the new footage that we've seen from both the Japanese trailer and the TV ad. So to jump back to the Japanese trailer, I think because we see Kylo Ren, put his laser sword to Rey's neck essentially, and I think that's the first time that we've seen those two characters together in the same scene as well.
It
so
is.
they do end up interacting in some way. So that's sort of a reveal. I mean, everyone I think just was assuming that would happen, but not necessarily, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Because Luke Skywalker never interacts with Tarkin or anything,
Right. And I really like, just on an aesthetic level, that plasma sword or whatever, that shot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that people are making fun of that thing. That to me, that makes like lightsabers kind of scary again, because it's like watching somebody, it's like being at a party and someone pulling out a gun with a barrel taped with duct tape, and they're like, last time I checked it was it was empty, and then they start clicking it. It's like, that thing looks like, Kylo Ren doesn't really, in that shot, doesn't actually look like he's that great with it. He can't quite.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that thing where, in Empire where Vader's got that pointed at Luke's face. And yes, it's, certain death, but he's got it. His arm is as rigid as a piece of steel. Whereas Kylo Ren, it's outgassing. There's heat. The waves of heat are actually causing, I don't know if this is like the effect of the heat causing her to shake, or she's shaking because she's like, it's, this thing is ridiculously hot. Yeah. Probably. And because it's so poorly made, and it's like, and it's right next to her face. To me, that actually, I like that because it's the first truly, quantifiable, piece of menace I've felt from Kylo Ren, rather than this kind of, this petulant, like, I'm gonna help your, we're gonna fix this, and I'm gonna be the best, and I'm gonna finish what you started, that kind of thing. That kind of, and him stumbling through the thing, and the old talk to the hand because I'm not listening or whatever. Right. His move. I mean, all that has been very kind of like Old Republic serial kind of Ming the Merciless posturing. This is like a very kind of real thing. I mean, they show him, I can't remember if it's now I'm getting confused between the trailer and the ad, but he ignites the saber, and it ignites in a slightly different way than it does in the first teaser.
In a way that a normal lightsaber might.
Yeah, so you're just like, this is something new that we, it's not like, years of Clone Wars and Rebels and all the lightsabers and the prequels, and like, it's become very rote. Like, I know what a lightsaber can and can't cut through, and so if he's not menacing, at least his weapon is. And sometimes that's actually more terrifying when people that don't seem to be all the right in the head have these terrible weapons that can.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what they were going for, both with, I guess, with this plasma sword as a reflection of Kylo Ren. Where the first time you see the lightsaber actually used in A New Hope, Kenobi just slices someone's arm off, and it's kind of cauterized. There's not a lot of blood, and it doesn't take like a flick of the wrist, and he just slices this guy's arm off, and that kind of like precision cut, that like ultra sharp precision, is what made those weapons so powerful, or that's what made them so dangerous as weapons. And so that's kind of been done, and with Kylo Ren and his sword, it's this idea that there's a little less control to it. It's a little less precise. And that lack of precision is what makes it dangerous because, how close does he actually have to get to you before, the heat coming off of it or the plasma, emanating from it or, sparking or whatever before that can, burn you or something. And so, yeah, it's the reflection of the character where it's that lack of precision, that lack of control is what makes them dangerous rather than, with Darth Vader, again, it was that he had complete control over the Force and could, just twitch his fingers and you would joke. But, yeah, it's a different character and it's a different kind of weapon, I guess.
So then we have, I guess, is that where we have this Chewbacca shot, the close-up?
Yeah, I think this is the same shot from the U.S. trailer that I noticed it. So I think this is Rey crying. And maybe I'm confusing two different shots, but there's Rey crying in the snow and holding what looks like Finn's jacket or Rey's jacket. But then there's what looks like maybe Chewbacca's bandolier next to her.
Yeah.
Is that the shot you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the shot of the close-up of Chewbacca and then the cut of him triggering something.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's a big thing because it's like, and we can bring it back into this other conversation, just like you never really see you've never really seen a close-up of Chewbacca's hand, which is kind of weird. It's like...
I guess the closest you would have gotten is in A New Hope when they're trying to put the binders on him to pretend to be
and he's got fists.
A prisoner. And even then, I don't think the camera gets that close.
No. It's almost like that thing where they kind of just threw some leather gloves on him and let the hair cover his hands.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know if his, that explosion that they show being something he does, it's if they're actually connected or it was just kind of a nice way to create some excitement. But I don't know. It just made me kind of realize how excited I am to have Chewbacca back as an active participant. I mean, it was nice in episode 3, but he didn't really have a lot to do because nobody had a lot to do in those Kashyyyk scenes. It was all kind of, it didn't feel very real. I think that was one of the worst CGI constructs.
Yeah, that was tough.
Literally, the only thing that's alive in there is the guy that played Tarful and Peter Mayhew, and we're talking CGI troopers, CGI platforms, CGI Yoda. I mean, we're only seeing a face, but it's the anticipation for me at least because Chewbacca I think was is the perfect Star Wars character for kids. I mean, he's the combination of your dog and your best friend, and which makes me these rumors that he's not gonna make it out of
maybe
this.
Doesn't survive the film.
Just really. I'd almost be more comfortable with them killing off Solo, than Chewbacca.
Yeah.
It's this kind of like.
I mean, we talked about this in relation to Han. Like, I don't know that. On the one hand, I don't know that having a character not continue after this movie means that necessarily that they have to die. Chewbacca could just retire, I guess. There's that whole like Wookiee life debt thing, but I think that's only in the EU, right? Like, I don't think they ever mention that.
It's something that's always been played around with in interviews and stuff like that. So it's been around since the 70s.
It's out there. So given that life debt, you're like, all right, well, he must have given his life to help to save Han or something. I don't know. And then at the same time, you have Larry Kasdan working on this movie, and he was, one of the folks pushing George Lucas to, kill off a character or two here and there to actually make the stakes worth something, to some kind of sacrifice to make everyone else's actions, mean more. And so given that, that might be happening. And again, as we talked about, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, it's Peter Mayhew's getting up there. He his physical health is okay, but not great. And who knows what his physical abilities and health will be like when they get around to, if they have Chewbacca in episode 8 or 9, who knows what it would be like then, and so maybe it's time to just kind of start writing him out.
I don't know. I still think he's that character can kind of. It's like Kenny Baker isn't going in this R2-D2 suit, and they're not writing that guy out yet. It's other people can play him, but yeah, I see where you're going. But you also can't underestimate what sometimes getting old can do to a writer who, when he was 30 years old writing, Empire Strikes Back or Jedi, he'd be like, yeah, we should kill off these people and make it real. Yeah. Then it's like when you're in your 60s and all of a sudden it's like, you've lost friends and things, and all of a sudden maybe the ideas that the best ending to something is like, killing them off, or having like the Dr. Zhivago ending where he has a heart attack in the middle of the street and drops dead. And that's like, oh man, that's so deep. I mean, even Lawrence Kasdan, kind of, I'm trying to think of something that he's written lately, because I always think about the things that he's done that I consistently enjoy. I never saw Grand Canyon, but it's like Big Chill, which it doesn't actually sound like a movie I would like, but it's actually one of my favorites because it's so well written. That movie kind of turns out could very easily have been a bummer about getting old, and actually turns out very hopeful. And it makes me wonder if that's the is it the international trailer for this Force Awakens where there's that line about this is not a day we gain hope. Now I don't have the line. I should have written the line down.
Oh, I don't know.
There is a line. Some people. Oh, I forget the lines. Like hope is not lost or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's cut with the. Is it cut with the shot of Rey crying over somebody?
Could be.
So it's the kind of like that, to me, that telegraphs that somebody does die. Mm-hmm. Or something, or they effectively lose the battle, and
Yeah.
But it makes me think, it makes me want. It's like, first, I don't know who. Everybody says that's Maz Kanata. I think that's Carrie Fisher doing kind of her uptight Princess Leia accent that she does. I mean, she kind of has two Princess.
I mean,
Leia.
maybe she gives like a speech to everyone to get them motivated.
Yeah, I mean, that might be recontextualized. It might be something. It might be before the battle too, so it might not even have anything to do with anything. I mean, that's. Right. I don't know. It's J.J. Abrams hasn't really made any inferences like, oh, I'm going to be messing with you. Don't take everything as. Don't. If anything, he's actually kind of pushing forward that it's a very simple story, well told, or something. Right. What was the term? Delightful.
Yeah. So he did an interview with Wired, I think, and he said like the one thing he wanted to make sure that this movie was delightful. So I guess we'll talk about it. So he wants this movie to be delightful, but there's not a lot of that in any of the advertising for it, right? All of these trailers that we've seen in the TV ad and the teasers that we've seen, like they're all pretty serious.
Yeah.
And they're intense to a certain degree. I mean, the only kind of like delightful bits of it that get your adrenaline pumping are, the Millennium Falcon being chased by TIE fighters, or that, the X-Wing TIE fighter battle. Other than that, it's like Rey crying, or Rey, kind of alone in the desert, or her, aiming that gun and she looks really angry, or Kylo Ren being angry, or Finn being like, I knew how to do one thing, or, whatever he says. I guess that was a better Harrison Ford impression than anything else. Harrison Ford saying, it's true, all of it. Like none of this is really, it's all very weighty and serious, and I wouldn't call anything that we've seen delightful, really.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, makes me go, really? That's, maybe we'll find out that, that JJ is, he kind of was up against it with the marketing of this thing, and like
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're like, oh, we're trying to play up we want it to, be almost dystopian because people like it when we found out
they're trying to compete with the
Scorched Trials or something.
Yeah.
The teenagers filled with destiny of
right.
Hunger
This like
Games.
post-apocalyptic, serious sci-fi, teenagers who are in serious trouble or whatever.
Yeah, which is funny because that's a genre that Star Wars effectively killed 38 years ago. When there was a lot of that kind of, like, I always call it kind of like sexy sci-fi, where it was like a lot of, people were scantily clad, and their problems were more, libidinous or whatever, like Logan.
Yeah.
I'm thinking mostly of like Logan's Run or, actually, that's probably the best example. I was trying to think.
Just Logan's Run.
I was like, well, I guess Silent Running, but Bruce Dern isn't really trying to fuck a tree in that thing, is he? It's like,
yeah. I wouldn't call Silent Running libidinous. I mean, although who knows what he did with those robots?
That's he was that's a great old pre Star Wars influence sci-fi movie, especially if you like droids, because there's droids in that, which a lot of people said was just stolen. George Lucas just
robots. They're not droids yet. They're robots.
Oh yeah, Huey, Louie, and Dewey.
Yeah. Yeah. So also in this J.J. Abrams interview, I mean, I didn't think there was like a ton of news in there, other than Rian Johnson watched dailies of The Force Awakens, and he saw an early cut as he was finishing the script. So, even though The Force Awakens is going to be it's a self-contained story, then it's not. Episode 8 isn't going to be starting all over, essentially, which you would expect. But it's just sort of nice to have confirmation that is happening. But then he also mentioned something that I thought was interesting. J.J. Abrams did, where he talked about. He wanted scenes. He wanted to make sure that these scenes had, the sweetness between Han and Rey and the humor between Han and Finn, which is sort of an interesting maybe window into what those relationships are like. Or we actually learn a little bit more about those characters, I think, through just hearing that than we do maybe in seeing yet another trailer.
Yeah, I was listening. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I know. I was listening to another Star Wars podcast. The Rebel Force Radio, which is like kind of like the number one, aside from us.
Yeah,
and they
aside from us.
So
they're the establishment Star Wars podcast.
Yeah, man. If
we're the punk Star Wars,
we're like we're the punk Star Wars podcast. We're like punk rock, only podcasts. They were talking about like the kind of they did a international trailer reaction show, and they kind of talked about the balance of relationships, and that maybe Rey is going to be kind of a Luke type character, and that emotionally speaking, that perhaps Finn might be a kind of a Princess Leia type character, a warrior, kind of a I don't even know what the dramatic term would be. Just maybe someone that might be calling Han on some stuff on the Falcon and might be irritating him, and there might be a back and forth, which might be an opportunity to actually, dip into the old, the sadly underused humor well for Star Wars. A lot of that was Gloria Katz and
her husband.
And her husband.
Who
added a lot of that kind of, Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant-esque back and forth into like, you came in that thing, you guys are braver than I thought, or get this walking carpet out of my way, all those great lines. I'm kind of hoping that Kasdan did emulate that a bit with a lot of the stuff in the asteroid field and some of the early parts of Cloud City. and of course, the big Hoth hallway thing. I'm kind of hoping that there'll be that. You know, it doesn't always have to be the lovey-dovey angle of it, but I do like that idea that there's a ideological tug of war in certain ideas where people, you know, and hopefully if, you know, somebody's going to provide that. If we kind of think that maybe Rey might be a child of Han Solo's or whatever, we might get it from that, or we might get it from Finn, who's going to be, you know, I get the idea that this guy will probably have the most growth from, you know, from the first scene to the last scene, that guy's going to be growing the most, and so it has the highest amount of potential for schism between our favorite characters, and I think that's a good thing. It might be an opportunity for some really good humor, and because eventually then it's like, then you'll actually like him for a reason, and not just because the movie tells you got to like this guy because he's the hero now.
Right. Well, and John Boyega did an interview with CNET, that he sort of mentioned that roundabout way, but he said, you know, when he was auditioning for the movie, he watched Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill's auditions, and he noted that they had this kind of casualness that they brought to it, and that so I mean, I hope that kind of, you know, casualness, not just in delivering technical dialogue about, you know, jumping to light speed or whatever, but, you know, that kind of like casual, laid back, sort of like being in the moment and being able to like joke with people, and, you know, using that to underlie the humor and everything. Like I'm with you. I hope that comes back, and I think it will. We just haven't seen it in anything. Like, we've just seen this super serious dialogue that's meant to be weighty, and, you know, there's been an awakening, and you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, coming off of 3 prequel movies that were pretty dour in their... Yeah. I mean, everything is, you know...
I mean, yeah, they gave Ewan McGregor some humor a little bit, and they gave... I guess Anakin Skywalker, what's his name? Hayden Christensen had some humor.
Yeah,
it didn't really work, but it didn't really work.
None of it. I mean, Obi-Wan
But
stuff...
other than that... You know, all of the comedy that Lucas put in those, it was like physical comedy. You know, it was Jar Jar was Harold Boyd or whatever. And
they put that stuff in, and they put it in 6 months after everything had been filmed, and
which is fine. But, you know, that kind of like verbal, that snappy back and forth dialogue is what people enjoyed about the original trilogy, and so it's, that I think you're right. Like, that was kind of what was missing from the prequel.
Yeah,
one of the things that was missing.
It's the subtlety. It's that weird reversal in Empire when you think Lando's gonna hit Han, and it turns out it's a ruse. I mean, I almost feel like if Lucas had redone the movies, it would be like they get off the Falcon, and then like Han would tell Chewie to like keep your eyes peeled, and then all of a sudden like C-3PO would fall off the platform, and there'd be like some robot garbage collector would pick him up and be like putting him back, and it would be all about this slapstick thing, and completely deaden this like, hey, what's going on here? Like, oh, buddy, and that kind of they wouldn't have that kind of thing, and so any tip of the hat that might be coming back is exciting, because and it doesn't even have to be like, oh, they're making a reference. It's like that you know, the ring theory of Star Wars, that everything is thematically repeated through all.
I don't really need to hear another Star Wars character say, I have a bad feeling about this. You know, like, I'm not really hoping for that.
Or what is it? Obi-Wan saying, you know, I think someday you'll be the death of me. And you're just like, you can't feel. I don't know how Lucas ever felt good about that, but I'm picking on George. I got to stop picking on George.
Well, but I mean, so the other piece of that, I mean, I will say is, right, they can write it. You know, they can write that kind of humor on the page, but you also need to have the actors who can sell it, you know, and so that's the other half of it, is that they need, you know, the actors need to be able to sell it, sell that kind of humor. So I guess we'll find out. But the other interesting bit from that Boyega interview, I thought, was he said something like, Finn is going to be one of those characters that carries on the narrative that we all know from the original. His story is not as straightforward, which is interesting. And that could mean any number of things, right? One of those characters that carries on the narrative that we all know from the original. Well, which narrative? I mean, it's all, one big hero's journey thing, but that took on a few different forms, and even in the original trilogy, and so that could mean any number of things, I guess.
Right. It's kind of, I think he's being cryptic. I mean,
right. Oh, sure.
And that's the thing, is like the idea that they're like, oh, is Finn the Jedi? Is Rey the Jedi? I get a feeling that they're both Jedi, and that's kind of how they find each other. They both have that kind of force thing. She might be more developed because we know her. We think we know her parentage or whatever. But I don't know. I guess I'm ready for anything. It's like everybody just because he holds a lightsaber, and just because the lightsaber is in the marketing. I mean, it might be just as simple as that. It's like we showed you. He's holding the lightsaber in the trailers. He's holding the lightsaber in the ads. He's going to be the Jedi. Why are you trying to read so much into it? I don't know. Right. Did you see that thing where basically J.J. Abrams said that when he raps on Force Awakens, that he is like done with it, done with Star Wars.
I mean, so he's a producer. He's an executive producer of Episode 8. At least, I don't know about 9, but I know at least 8. And so I would imagine he'll keep a hand in for that. But I mean,
But that's I'm kind of thinking that's not true, though.
Yeah, I mean, he did, when he was first asked to do The Force Awakens, his initial reaction was to say no. And he had other things sort of lined up that he wanted to do. And so, and this is what kind of bugged me about the coverage of it. And J.J. Abrams hasn't done anything to encourage this, so I want to be clear that I'm not talking about anything that Abrams has said. But this is the way that people are covering it, as they're saying, oh, J.J. Abrams got handed the reins to the Star Wars franchise. It's like, no, he didn't. Kathleen Kennedy did.
Right.
And she chose J.J. Abrams to do the first movie, and then you have all of these other people who are going to have a hand in everything else. And J.J. Abrams isn't the one setting out what the entire trilogy is going to look like, or what the the anthology movies are, or the A Star Wars Story movies are it's the Lucasfilm Story Group that report to Kathleen Kennedy. And so this idea that J.J. Abrams is like in charge of Star Wars now, again, he hasn't done anything to encourage that view, I don't think, unless his publicists are the one like putting that out there that we just don't know it. But you hear him referred to as like being given the reins to this and being in charge of Star Wars now, but I don't think he is, and I don't think he wants to be.
Right. And I mean, and for all intents and purposes, I mean, Rian Johnson is directing 8 and writing 9 for Colin. Obviously, probably.
Is he writing 9, or is that still a rumor, or has that been confirmed?
I thought that was confirmed, but maybe I don't have any way I can check. But obviously, he's probably collaborating with Trevorow or whatever. I mean, he has to. Essentially, he probably has to be writing it, because he's going to probably, if they follow the formula, if there really is a formula, there probably has to be some kind of major development in the second film that affects the third. So therefore, that if he and Trevorow work in concert, and I don't think Trevorow, I don't know, did he write the script for Safety Not Guaranteed? I don't believe so. No, I thought didn't the Duplass's write that? I think so. So I mean, I don't think he's a writer.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he worked on the Jurassic World script, but I mean, I don't know if I would
right. As all directors do, they have some kind of script input.
Right, just for logistics.
But that doesn't mean he gets. So he has, for writing credits, I just went to IMDb. So he has a screenplay credit for Jurassic World. And then he has credit for Gary Under Crisis, a TV movie, reality show, which was a documentary from a decade ago, something called Making Revolution from 2003. But, Safety Not Guaranteed, he was just the director and maybe a producer or he's certainly not listed as a credited writer for episode 9.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting a director's input, but I don't think that they obviously know that this guy can handle a large production, and he's got a thing. I mean, I don't want to, it's pretty easy to bag on Jurassic World because everybody I know that saw it said it was a piece of garbage. Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, but compared to Jurassic Park, compared to Steven Spielberg, yeah, it's pretty garbagey, but he did kind of achieve the impossible. He took a movie and it's, the fourth film of a flagging franchise, and he started with a nugget of an idea that was basically a toy line. Because I think at one time there was a toy line for Jurassic Park after they'd milked the cash cow of like extreme dinosaurs with lasers on them and stuff. I don't even know if they actually came out with the toys. I mean, if you ever saw the Jurassic Park toys, there was a lot of this Ian Malcolm's got his chaos theory velociraptor trap, that kind of stuff.
Right. He's got, right. It's like they're doing with The Force Awakens and all these, they're combine a weapon or build a weapon, and they're different costume, or I don't even know what they're called. They're giving them all these accessories. They're like, that's probably not in the movie.
Yeah, and I think of that. In some ways, that's a good sign because it shows you that when they showed the script or to the marketing people, they're like, oh, there's not enough kid action in this movie. We're going to have to, when these kids get home with these toys, we're going to have to do something that inspires play because they're not, because them trying to recreate of The Force Awakens.
Just Rey and her staff. Like, okay, you can only make one of those.
There's not enough of these, and there's not enough straight up action in the movie for kids. So to me, that actually, I take that as heartening because it's like, oh, then there's actually going to be like a real story. Although you could say, well, there was a lot of talking in The Phantom Menace, but there was also that whole movie is centered around two things: a pod race and a lightsaber battle at the end. It's essentially that everything is was marketed off of those two events: the games, the toys, the commercials. Right. Of course, I'm just speculating, but yeah, I mean, I for my part, I've read that it was that JJ really is doing a handoff and that he will not be involved. Yeah. But who knows? I mean, that's the thing. If something comes back and they go, oh, they had some questions and they brought me in or something like, you know. I mean, yeah, Trevorow might be the much maligned by me Richard Marquand of the new saga. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to call it. It's funny. I was at a toy store or at a Target or something, and they had a book, and it was kind of like a shorthand book for people to get a primer of Star Wars for kids, and they called it and it only covered episode 1 through 6. And they said covers the entire Skywalker Star Wars saga. Right. Which makes me really kind of like, oh, so what is this one going to be called? Right.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of running out of good names to call these movies that still fit within the format that they've established in the first 7, I guess. Right. So episodes 8 and 9, by the time we get to episode 9, I'm really worried that it's going to be something kind of dumb.
It'll be so far from its origins that you'll just it'll almost be like a weird a weird puzzle piece that's like, wait a second, this thing has all square edges and the ones the ones at the beginning had round edges.
Right. The Force has breakfast.
The Force, exactly.
The Force is awakened, then it has a shower, and then it has breakfast.
A sensible breakfast, like some muesli or maybe some Cheerios if the health food store is closed.
And nice toast and jam.
Oh.
What did you think of those? So we got new posters. We got character posters. What did you think of those?
So here's the problem. Like, immediately someone commented about the fact that if you look, their faces are artificially stretched to cut. And so I can't look at those posters without looking at their faces being distorted.
Yeah, I didn't think they looked that great.
Yeah. It's like Harrison Ford. He's got that gray 5 o'clock shadow face, and then his like the part obscured by his gun is kind of like mushy, and like they shrunk his eye so they wouldn't have to show any of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Carrie Fisher's looks all right. I mean,
hers I like the best. I think.
Yeah,
because and I don't understand the symbolism of covering up one eye. But with hers, like, it was a little covered, but you could still see it, and so I thought she looked the best out of all of the posters.
Yeah, I mean, Rey, she's got freckles and stuff like that. So
yeah, Rey's
the more real. She looked the most realistic.
Yeah,
and I would say that Carrie Fisher, you could see her jaw's really tight, and she's in a certain position, and it's been digitally smoothed and all this stuff. Whereas the Rey, she's got the sweat and stray hairs, but although I mean I guess overall the ladies look the best on these posters. I actually am much bigger fan of these banner style posters where like it's Boyega holding the lightsaber over his shoulder and Kylo Ren and Rey. I just kind of like that like I said, I'm not a big fan of the official posters anyway. I will say that the landscape, I did get a chance to look at the landscape one. I like it a little bit better. Its positioning. Oh,
the international poster?
Yeah.
Yeah, they took out some characters too from the main US theatrical poster. They took out Poe and Chewbacca and Captain Phasma. And so I like it because it's a lot less busy as well. Just taking out a couple characters, you're not trying to cram everyone in.
Yeah, I still haven't heard any kind of rumors about why Struzan didn't do the official poster, but maybe, like I said, it's probably one of those things where they want to touch on the old stuff, but they really don't want to be beholden to, a whole lot of people that worked on something, 30 some odd years ago. They kind of want to have to market it for a new audience. I mean, it does fall into that thing where they're like, oh, this is, you think this is your Star Wars, but it's not. Although I would say that this Force Awakens is our Star Wars, and then everything else, all bets are off.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else?
Yeah.
What else do we have?
So I guess that pretty much covers all the latest promotion for the film, I think. There is at least one thing I feel like we should probably talk about, which is the latest issue of the Star Wars comic title came out last Wednesday. So, we're by the time most people are listening to these episodes, we're like a week behind on the comic releases. But we finally got the story of Sana Solo, the woman who claims to be Han's wife. And again, this is taking place in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And she, is trying to, I don't know, claim a bounty on Han, or at least just try to get him back to come back with her and keep being a smuggler. And so he explains to Leia, it was basically just a scam that they were running on some crime lord where they needed a big distraction. And so they were like, oh, well, how about a wedding? And so Sana and Han pretended to get married. It's anticlimactic, neither one of us thought it was real. And we were both like, all right, this can't be, she can't really be his wife. But as far as like explanation, and part of it may have been the way it was delivered, where, Han was just telling Leia like, oh, this is what it was. Rather than it was told rather than shown what it was. But even then, just the explanation itself is like, yeah, I guess. I feel like there were more creative ways they could have gotten around.
Oh yeah, I mean, just let's do a quick what do you call it? Think tank about that? Not think tank.
Brainstorm.
Thank you. Oh, Jesus, God, I hate getting old. a brainstorm. Think of like what if instead of having this like 3-issue drag out, no, you don't understand. That's not the way it is, and just keep going to that. Why didn't they have a story where they had to get Han and Leia had to get fake married in order to achieve some goal, and it would have been this funny idea that Han's obviously on the make. I mean, I don't really understand why Leia would be that annoyed anyway. Are they dating at this point in the comics?
Yeah, I think it's clearly like she has some feelings for him, and he, I guess, has feelings for her, obviously, but like they're not acting on them yet, I think, and so I don't know.
And again, it puts everything out of order because that issue becomes much more present in Empire it almost seems like that's the first time they discuss it, and it's like this thing where it's like you don't want me to leave because it's how you feel. Like, yeah, you're a natural leader. And he's like, that's not what we're talking about, and it's like that should really be the first tip of the hat that they're kind of like at the end of. That one scene is like she's got a lot of spirit type thing where he's like, well, I'm a little bit interested and whatever. Again, they're moving too fast in these things when it's like they could, if they're committed to doing this span of stories from the Death Star exploding to them setting up a base on Hoth, they actually have an opportunity to kind of tell like small self-contained stories. I kind of like the idea that maybe they would spend the issue just kind of, let's have an issue where, it's Luke and Chewbacca's problem, on Nar Shaddaa. And then let's have a couple issues that are focused. They don't have to keep bouncing back and forth, which I feel like they never like I was reading this, I think I read it last night, and I was done with it so fast that I was like, what the heck happened? I thought there were pages missing. I had to go back and think that maybe it didn't download properly or something. I'm like, what's going on here? There's like, we were just kind of getting to this. I don't know. I would say that the actual Star Wars title is probably for me is the most frustrating title.
I mean, and even the Darth Vader title, which, so Star Wars and Darth Vader are their two ongoing, series right now. Well, I guess Kanan is the other, but, so both, Kanan, especially, like, you do get these largely self-contained stories, in 5 or 6 issues. Darth Vader, you still do, even though it's like an ongoing story, you do get a sense that, you at least get a sense of where it's headed, right? Okay, so Darth Vader's fallen out of favor after the Death Star blew up, and he is working with, Afra and these droids to build up his own private, army or his own private forces to regain power, and, he has to cover up his tracks when he's doing it. You have a sense of where this is headed. Whereas with the Star Wars title, like, I have no idea where any of this is going. Yeah, it just seems like they're just
moving the goalpost.
We'll just keep giving these people things to do and see what happens. And I have no real sense of like, but
yeah, they move the goal.
Junctures in the story that story beats. Like what is supposed to happen at what point and what. Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, and I'm being kind of cynical here. It feels like the only point of the story currently in the main masked Star Wars title is just to get you to buy the next issue. That they literally move the goalposts constantly to the fact that everything is on a really hard cliffhanger. Where the original Marvel, and I know I'm a broken record about this, but I truly think that the first 4 or 5 years of, and actually even some of the post Return of the Jedi stuff was like, for your 22 pages, you actually got a full story. And yes, they would sometimes end on a cliffhanger, and sometimes it would go on for a thread for 3 or 4 issues. But you at least felt like when you were there, you weren't just being like set up for the next issue. And then the next issue just pushes the story forward just enough to keep you interested, kind of. And I'll be honest with you, if I wasn't doing this show, I would not be reading these comics, because it's like, I like talking about them because I find it interesting. It's an interesting part of the Star Wars experience. But if it was just my own thing and I didn't have anybody to talk about, I'd never pick these up, because maybe I'd probably pick up the Darth Vaders, because I've seen, but because it's at least, although it's a weird story for me, it does actually have most in common with that 70s Marvel run, where it's there's interesting characters that they don't need to put them in the movies. They don't need to be on Rebels. They just exist in the comics, and you'll enjoy them. And they're, it's kind of a, like, I forget the girl's name. That's kind of his
Afra.
Afra, thank you. Afra, she's an interesting character. Hopefully, I'm kind of hoping it doesn't turn out that that's who Felicity Jones is playing. I just think it's like, just keep her in the comics and just have, like, and Lando, the Lando comic is the best example of that. Although it did they cliffhangered it. It was a much better use of time, where it's like this thing, it's like these little things, like, Luke fighting in a gladiator pit and being like, oh, this isn't my lightsaber. Yeah, kind of just these little goofy things, and they're kind of redoing the General Grievous thing with this Hutt, because he carries all these lightsabers as a trophy, and it just feels like treading water. I don't really care if they said for some reason, like, they were canceling this issue. I wouldn't even care where it was going. I didn't care where it was going, because we all know where it ends up. And,
right.
And they're not making me feel like I know any more about how, Disney wants to portray these characters. It's like, to me, it's just, ugh. Thumbs down.
I will say I did warm up a little bit to the Luke storyline in this issue. I mean, that story felt like, exactly what you were talking about. Those kind of initial Marvel run, those kind of older pulpy kind of sci-fi fantasy space adventure stories, where you might have your hero in the gladiator arena who has to fight for his life on this planet. This strange planet with all these strange creatures. That idea I can see being from that era. But I just don't think the way they're going about it is like, okay, so what? Like,
it's the fourth issue that they've led up to this. If they were doing it in a true storytelling fashion, it would be told in maybe he'd have been Nar Shaddaa. He would run afoul of somebody. He'd get captured. They'd explain it, and at the end, it would be that, I don't know, that Rancor looking thing or whatever it's called coming at them. Also, what's up with that Hutt? Are those feet that he has, or legs, or are they? They're
like they're mechanical spider legs or something that he.
Okay, I was like,
it's like instead of a repulsor lift, he has.
I see.
It's sort of like what they did with Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, where they just gave him these like spider legs.
I see. And so then it could end on a cliffhanger, and then the next issue he could fight the thing, and then maybe then maybe on the way out of town he can get in a fight with Dengar. Or Chewbacca and Dengar could do their thing, and that could just be like a half an issue resolve thing. I mean, I like that, like you said in your notes. I like that part of it. I like the Dengar thing. I just feel like they're trying to do they're trying to tell three stories at once, and it's just they're not doing it in a way that is satisfying in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And to your point about you probably wouldn't be reading at least this title if we weren't having the show. I mean, I might, just because I'd be curious, like, oh, I kind of want to see what they're doing, but I would still be reading it out of obligation, I think, of like, all right, I want to see where they're going with this, and eventually I might get bored and stop reading at some point. I mean, I think they're having this crossover, Vader Down event whatever. And again, the difference is the Darth Vader comic, it actually seems like it's sort of leading towards something, whereas this Star Wars title, they're just kind of marking time until that happens. And so, after the Vader down thing, we'll see maybe the Star Wars comic, they kind of pick back up and have some kind of momentum and direction to it. But yeah, like you said, they're just, kind of stringing along without any real sense of, all right, we're going somewhere with this.
Right.
You can expect us to hit this story beat later on, and it's going to be fantastic,
So, what do you want to...
I guess, yeah, before we wrap up, just because this has been pushed off a couple times, I was trying to track down for a long time the short stories that got added to that Rise of the Empire book, which they took the novels Tarkin and A New Dawn and put them together with 3 short stories and released them all in one, binding. It's all one thing that you buy. And so, I was trying, because I just wanted to read the short stories. I already had Tarkin and A New Dawn. I was like, well, I don't want to get them again just to read this. But eventually I just broke down and got The Rise of the Empire. So, so there are 3 short stories. One is about Hera Syndulla, who is on Star Wars Rebels, and it takes place a little bit before Star Wars Rebels. One story is Tarkin and Count Vidian being a character from A New Dawn, and it's them sort of working together. And then the other story is Levers of Power, which is about Rey Sloane, who's also originally from A New Dawn. And that one takes place during the Battle of Endor, when she's, in charge of the Star Destroyer there. So Mercy Mission, I mean, they're all pretty well written. And, they're short stories that just kind of give backstory to events or characters that are given more prominence in other titles or movies or TV shows, whatever. So it's not that they're inconsequential, but they're certainly, you can enjoy Rebels without having read Mercy Mission, or, you can, I guess, trying to think of other stuff. You can read other novels you can read the Tarkin novel without having to read Bottleneck. They're not essential, but they're good. They're well done. So, I mean, Mercy Mission in particular, as I pick back up here, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just one moment in Hera's life that she thinks, oh, maybe I should assemble my own team and fight against the Empire. And in fact, like, she literally has that thought at the end of the story, which is a little on the nose. But it's well written. And there's some mild danger where you think that her crew might not be able to complete their mission, but in the end, it turns out to not be that much of a problem. And so the danger, like, there's not a lot of dramatic tension in it. Bottleneck is the story with Tarkin and Count Vidian. It's again pretty well written, but there's not a ton of payoff. It's sort of a mystery or a puzzle where Tarkin and Count Vidian are sent to this planet to get the competing factories to maximize their production, so that I don't even remember what they need to do. Like,
oh man,
what the factories do. It's like they manufacture blasters or something. I will say that this story is mostly it mostly works as backstory a little bit for Rey Sloane, who has a cameo, and then she shows up in Levers of Power and again in A New Dawn and in Aftermath. And then also there's a character who is just mentioned in this story, but then who has a bigger role in Twilight Company, which I'm reading now. And so that's sort of interesting. I think Levers of Power is the one that is probably the best, or at least the one I enjoyed the most, just because it gives you actual, like, substantive meaningful backstory about this character, in this case Rey Sloane, and you get to see her sort of being good at what she does, and being in charge of a Star Destroyer during, as I said, the Battle of Endor, where, you know, she realizes she's the one who figures out, oh, the rebels aren't retreating because they're just waiting for the shield generator on Endor to go down, and her using all of her training to kind of demonstrate command and contrasting her, you know, standing in her sort of command pose, contrasted that with the Emperor and his definition of, you know, the battle station, the Death Star being the ultimate power in the universe. You know, and even in that case, you know, all three of these stories are basically for completists. You know, none of them are really essential, even if you like Star Wars and Star Wars novels, and, you know, you're reading all the novels you can. Like, these short stories are nice, but they're not, you know, they're not essential.
Not essential.
I am kind of curious to see what's going to happen with Rey, because she, you know, she played a big role in Aftermath, and I assume she'll also have a big role in the rest of the Aftermath trilogy. But after that, I'm beyond that, I'm kind of curious to see where else that character might pop up. I've been reading the Blade Squadron stories, which are being serialized in the Star Wars Insider magazine. I'm not that impressed with those. So those are about the B-Wing squadron that's at the Battle of Endor, and sort of who some of those pilots are and what they do during Endor and then afterwards. The first couple of stories in particular are pretty cliched as they're introducing the characters. You know, the point of comparison would be the Rogue Squadron books, and those two, especially the early ones, were so cliched in terms of who introducing the characters and the types of characters that you ran into. But what made those books more enjoyable was sort of the way the action was described, and then over time you kind of grew to connect with these characters on, you know, another level. And so obviously, being short stories serialized in a magazine, you're not going to have the same chance to connect with these characters and have more exposure to them. But, you know, the second and third stories were a little bit better because they relied more on action and battle, and they were paced pretty well. The main character in these stories is also pretty interesting, or she has potential to be interesting anyway. Her name is Gina Moonsong. She's a very good pilot. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if she pops up somewhere else as well. I mean, obviously, we don't know what her ultimate fate will be because it's a serialized story, but, you know, it would be interesting to see if someone else picks up on that character and does something else with her, because I think she has the potential to be interesting. So that's sort of my update that's been delayed for a couple of weeks. As I said, it's, you know, the update wasn't that essential because the stories themselves weren't essential, but, you know, it's nice to see, even if the stories themselves aren't for everyone, you know, if they're mostly for completists, that they're pretty well written. You know, Mercy Mission is a little, I wouldn't say tedious, but it's like, you know, you have no real sense of where it's headed, and it just kind of doesn't go anywhere. But you know, on a technical level, like, these are all pretty well written, so it's nice to see that the quality of writing is decent. So that's my report.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder once. I'm kind of, like I said, I've kind of gotten very turned off by the books, but once the movie comes out, then maybe depending on how I feel about it, maybe my interest will be kind of reignited, wanting to delve into this new EU. I think I'm still bearing some of the pangs of, you know, being so not really invested, but being so knowledgeable about it because I read so many of them, and now it's like, that stuff's all in the trash now. I'm like, well, let's wait, see how I think about these movies before I throw myself headlong into this. But
yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, and you've been pretty skeptical that they're going to stick to this one canon, one canon across all media. Idea.
And I just, you know.
So yeah, I could see maybe being skittish that, okay, well, how much time am I going to invest in trying to track down these short stories if they're going to be inconsequential anyway? But, you know, they're enjoyable enough reads, I guess. If you at least, I mean, they do kind of rely on the fact that the reader already cares about who these characters are. And so, if you really like Ray Sloan from Aftermath or A New Dawn, I would check that story out. If you love Rebels and you love Hera, Mercy Mission is for you. If you really like Count Vidian or you really like Tarkin, then go wild on that story. But for someone who's just like, oh, I kind of want to start getting into the new canon, like, yeah, you can skip these for a while.
Yeah. Cool. And also, I don't know how sensitive my microphone is. I apologize to listeners if you could hear my dog freaking out.
No, don't apologize. It's
Could you hear her?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's fine.
She was like, that's
fine. She's our second co-host. She was just reacting to my review.
Nah, she's reacting to the mailman.
You're saying go on. Yes.
I'm listening, John. Tell me all about Count Vidian. Woof.
Yeah.
If you would like to interact with us even after that dog impression, you can. Best way is tweet at us, follow us at Talking Birdcast on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
You can email us directly if you don't want people knowing you're contacting fledgling Star Wars podcasts. We will protect your identity at talkingbirdcast at gmail.com. You can like us at Facebook on facebook.com/talkingbirdpodcast. If you like imagery of Rebels,
and say it won't just be that, but that's
stuff like that. We we totally even forgot to talk about that great shot of from the international trailer.
Oh yeah,
of the
TIE fighters,
behind the sun. That we could probably have gone an hour on that. So we don't need to tell you what to think about it, other than it was awesome.
Yep.
We have a Tumblr. It's talkingbirdStarWars.tumblr.com. You can find us. There was a question about accessibility of the podcast, because not everybody is a big fan of the Apple architecture. So we are on iTunes. We are also, you can get us directly on Libsyn. I don't know the URL, but if you just put Talking Bird Podcast.
I think it's just talkingbirdcast.libsyn.com.
Yeah.
Libsyn is how you spell Libsyn. So.
And we're also on Stitcher Radio. So that's an easy way to find us. I think that's pretty much all we have. I mean, next week we'll probably get into. John's been also reading the Battlefront book. He'll probably give you his thoughts about that. We'll probably get caught
assuming
up.
I finish it, but I may.
Yeah, we'll get caught up on Rebels for sure, because by that time there'll be 2 more episodes. Unfortunately, the game itself comes out on Tuesday, so I won't even have a chance to play it before we record again. So you probably won't get anything on that, but oh well. I want to thank you for listening and for Talking Birdcast. I have been Robert Zachary.
And I'm John Llewellyn.
Thanks for listening, and may the force be with you.